I think that at this point, most people know how I feel about Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon. However, I really wanted to build the deck with the new support. Well, more specifically, I wanted to just build Invoked Blue Eyes or a more pure Blue Eyes deck with the new support. But I recently did a poll on my channel and people told me that I should play Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon at locals. Now, I will say I didn't end up actually taking this deck to that local tournament. I valued my 4 hours more than the memes of playing Chaos Max Dragon. I'm trying to keep up a streak of just always topping locals now that I've started going to locals again, and so I just played frogs. But anyway, I still built this deck, and I actually did intend on taking it. This is probably the most success I've ever had with the Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon deck. I think it's really well positioned not only with the new support that just came out in the Kaiba collection, but also just like the format. A lot of people are cutting kaijus from their side decks and main decks especially in favor of like evenly matched, and evenly matched doesn't really work against this deck because a lot of times you only have just like a Chaos Max on board and then like maybe one other card. So I think this deck is fairly well positioned. You still have to play some like Morphage Goliath cards so that your deck has a win condition, but overall when I was playing this deck it was like working pretty much every single game, which is really surprising to me. So yeah, if you want to play Chaos Max Dragon, I guess now is like the best time to do it. And it's cool because I know this deck just got a lot cheaper with all the Kaiba collection stuff coming out, reprinting almost every card in the deck besides Alternative, which is really great because when I bought this deck a couple months ago, if you remember, I did that on stream and that it cost like almost $200 because the Blue Eyes cards are really expensive, but now they're getting reprinted, so it's really cool. Anyway though, so we're playing 2 copies of Chaos Max Dragon. Yeah, I mean, you don't ever need to summon the second one. That's almost never going to happen. But you definitely want to, like, sometimes it's fine to, like, hard draws if you happen to also have Manju. And sometimes you, like, banish it off Desires. But, yeah, really good card. Really good card. In this deck, a lot of times you just use it for a level 8 monster. But we'll get to that in a second. 3 Blue Eyes, regular Blue Eyes. There's always this like huge debate about which artwork to use. I like the original LOB artwork. A lot of people don't, but I just that's what I play. These are from the LOB set, so they're not first eds, but they're still pretty cool looking. A lot of people like the movie pack one is probably my second favorite artwork, and then I don't even know after that, but I just like the original one, sue me. We have 3 copies of Alternative. I know it's like the most expensive card of the deck now. You do have to play 3 of it. That's why it's so expensive, because anytime that like an entire deck is reprinted except like one card, that one card shoots up in price. It happened with Rubik and Burning Abyss. When those got reprinted, it happened with Cliffort Monolith as well, and now it's happened with Alternative. But you do have to play through this card. Unfortunately, it's just way too good not to play. We have 2 copies of Dragon Spirit of White. It's alright. I mean, it's like, sometimes you'll summon 2, but usually you won't. The one benefit of this card right now is that you can revive this as Dragon Revival Rhapsody. A lot of people think that you just have to have the original Blue Eyes card, like an actual normal monster, but they forget that Spirit's actually a normal monster while it's in the graveyard, so you can bring this out with Revival Rhapsody and banish stuff. It's pretty cool. We are playing 3 copies of Sage. In this version, you almost always never normal summon this. You're just using it for its discard effect because we have too many other normal, well, not really, not a lot in like quantity of normal summons that we're playing, but in the quality of normal summons, we have some really good ones. So you definitely won't be summoning this so often, but definitely it's still really good. We also have the 3 White Stone of Ancients, obviously a fantastic card. It's the 3rd best thing to send with number 95, so definitely you're almost always sending that as your 3rd card with number 95, pretty good. 1 White Stone, it's like all right. I mean, it's not like the greatest card in the deck, but it's cool to have like the option to search a Blue Eyes that you can discard for trade-in. That's usually what you're doing. We also have 3 copies of Manju. This is the best normal summon in the deck. It's like one of the only +1s in the entire deck, which is kind of worth noting. Blue Eyes is full of a lot of -1s or a lot of 1-for-1 trades or like 2-for-2 trades. This is one of the only +1s, so it definitely has priority over a lot of other cards. And I like this card a lot too, because the biggest problem with the Chaos Max deck in terms of consistency is that you can't search the ritual spells. So you can search Chaos Max with Melody, and that's cool, but you can't search the ritual spells because you can't use Preparation Rites or Pre-Preparation Rites in this deck. And that means that like if you don't draw the ritual spells, you're in a really rough spot. So you really have to play Manju to grab the ritual spells. I've seen some people playing 2 of this card. I think it's just like incorrect. Like you're just gonna brick so many times if you don't play 3 of it. One card that I was oh my gosh, I was so surprised that this card was actually playable. The King of D. So the reason I didn't think this card is playable is because I've mostly been playing the Invoked variant of this deck, which I believe is the better variant by far. But in the Invoked variant, you need to normal summon for Alistair every single time. But in the pure version of Blue Eyes and in the Chaos Max version, this card's incredible because it just evens out your hands, and you don't have as many normal summons that are like really top priority. Like there's no normal summon in this deck that's like better than like normal summoning Alistair. But because we're not playing Alistair, this card's really good, and it's particularly good in the Chaos Max variant because you can discard the ritual spells that are like extra in your hand and then search something like Melody or Revival. So yeah, it's a really good card turn 1 to search Melody, and a really good card turn 2 or turn 3 or even later on to search Revival Rhapsody. So I like that card a lot. I was really surprised. We are playing the Archbrave and Amorphage Goliath. So I always have to defend these cards. I don't know why. They have hundreds of logged tops. These are by far staples in terms of competitive Blue Eyes decks. You'd have to be crazy not to play them. I understand that maybe it's hard to see for like some more casual players why these cards are good, but these just tell your opponent they can't play the game. It's that simple. The entire win condition of this deck is getting 2 level 8 monsters on board to make number 95, and then sending both these and then Ancients, so you can grab Goliath and your opponent's standby phase, and then you just win the game. This deck, without these cards, has no win condition. Chaos Max is not a good enough win condition. Chaos Max is good when it's next to Goliath, because then it gives your opponent 2 things to awkwardly deal with. But Chaos Max isn't enough by itself, and normal rank 8s aren't enough by themselves, and number 95 isn't enough by itself. If you're using number 95 and you're not playing these cards, like, it just doesn't really accomplish anything. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't make a big board. But like Blue Eyes, like I said earlier, they have a lot of -1s, they have a lot of 1-for-1 trades. So the way that you take advantage of that, or the way that you sort of circumvent that, is by summoning Goliath, because then like it doesn't matter how many cards you lost, because now your opponent like can't play any cards. So you have to play these cards. There's really no way around it anymore. They're so proven at this point. It's ridiculous that I have to keep defending them. But they are incredibly good. One set of cards you might notice I'm not playing is I'm not playing Hand Traps. I was side decking 3 Ash Blossom, 2 Ogre, 3 Reaper, but this is a going first deck. I mean, obviously with the Amorphage Goliath, you can see that. So in game 1, you don't really want those cards, but definitely when you go second, you side out the Goliaths, and sometimes you side out even like the Chaos Max just to have like a Blue Eyes deck with Hand Traps. That's pretty good. But going first, game 1, you just want to have Goliath. Anyway. Onto the spells. We have 3 copies of Melody, really good search spell. You can add it with King of D now, so it's really cool. 3 copies of Trade-In. Man, it sucks when this card gets ashed. Well, really, like either of these cards, when they get ashed, it like really sucks. Like, we're also playing 2 copies of Pot of Desires, but to be completely honest, like, Desires getting ashed is like way better than either of these cards, because if Desires gets ashed, it's just like a 1-for-1 trade. But when these cards get ashed, you're actually taking a -1 because you have to discard the card still. So that's kind of like it's like the only deck where like you want the Desires to get ashed, like these cards resolve, because if Melody gets ashed, you're probably just gonna lose the game. Anyway, these are like our draw and search power, so those are really good cards. Definitely, the more of those you see, the better you're off. Especially now that we have King of D. If we draw like multiples, you can just get rid of them. We have 3 copies of Return of the Dragon Lords. If you are trying to play this deck competitively, which I would suggest not, just play the Invoked version. But if you are like playing set locals and you end up playing against like a Pendulum player, this card is super important because the Goliath is really hard for Pendulums to out unless they have Purple Poison Magician. Now it is harder to get to Purple Poison Magician when you have Goliath because they can't make Electromite till they just search it. But even with that in mind, if they just have Purple Poison Magician, they can just attack and crash into it and kill it. Unless you have Return of the Dragon Lords. So if you have Return of the Dragon Lords, you can protect it. It's really good. So I definitely recommend like trying to turbo this into the graveyard if you're planning on making the Goliath, just to have some added protection. And we have 2 copies of Dragon Revival Rhapsody. This card's insane. We are just playing the 2 copies because it's not really good turn 1. It's usually like a turn 2 or turn 3 card. But you have essentially 4 copies of it because you're playing King of D. And this card is also insane in the Invoked version because Alistair's a spellcaster. In that version, I'd probably even play 3 of it because it's just so ridiculous. But yeah, it's still good in this deck. And for the ritual spells, we have 2 copies of Advanced Ritual Art, 2 copies of Chaos Form. Advanced Ritual Art is clearly like the better of the 2. However, you don't always have Blue Eyes in deck. So you're always adding one Blue Eyes with Melody, and you're always special summoning Blue Eyes with Sage. That only leaves one copy of Blue Eyes in your deck, and that's not counting if you draw it or if you banish it off of Pot of Desire. So you have to play Chaos Form to have something else. Also, you're never resolving 2 Advanced Ritual Art. It's basically impossible. Like, there's no way that's going to happen. But it is possible that you will use Advanced Ritual Art, and then, like, on a next turn, like, activate Chaos Form, banishing the Blue Eyes you sent to then summon Chaos Max Dragon. And that play comes up every once in a while, but I don't know. People can't seem to agree on the ratios of the ritual spells. I happen to think 2 and 2 is the most consistent and the best for just like longevity reasons. So those cards work out. For the 1-ofs, we have 1 copy of Dragon Shrine. This is like one of the only reprint cards I'm playing because, man, look at the secret rare. It looks so cool. But I like the original prints for most of the other stuff. And anyway, Dragon Shrine's really good. It's not quite that, like, it's not like you want to play 2 copies of it because it's a hard once per turn. And one of the ways this deck can brick really hard is if you draw like all hard ones per turn effects and you draw multiples of them. So we're just playing the 1 Dragon Shrine, but it is a 1 card setup to the Dragon of Lava Rhapsody as long as you have a spellcaster, because it can put a Blue Eyes and then like another guy in Graves. So it's pretty cool. And then lastly, we have Monster Reborn Soul Charge. These cards are obviously just broken in Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes is like one of the best decks for Soul Charge because you can like actually make cards that matter. Also, these cards can potentially help you out with like another big wave of summons after you like after your like original board gets killed. You can just like Soul Charge or Monster Reborn and just start doing some unfair things. So that's the main deck. It's yeah, I think it's pretty consistent from what I was playing with it. I think I was getting like the ideal setup of Goliath and Chaos Max Dragon probably about 50% of the time, but I was getting to Goliath itself like about 8 in 10 games, so I thought it was pretty consistent. Yeah, I mean, it's not like the best deck, and it doesn't have a lot of recovery outside of like Dragon of Lava Rhapsody, but overall probably like the best experience I've had playing this deck, so that's something, I guess. For the extra deck, we have 2 copies of Spirit. The things we can summon with it, we have Michael, Moonlight, Ancient Fairy. Usually you're summoning this to special a guy from the hand and make one of the level 8 synchros, but it is worth noting that he can pop field spells. That's kind of cool. 1 copy of Azure Eyes. It's not as good as it used to be, but it's definitely a good card. The level 8s we're playing are Crystal Wing and Omega. Crystal Wing, obviously most people know about. Omega is really good in this deck though because you can recycle the Return of the Dragon Lords, particularly if you can manage to get Omega next to a Goliath, which definitely can happen if you open Soul Charge, or if you can like resolve Dragon of Lava Rhapsody. That's pretty good. Not super difficult, but if you can get that on the field, then you definitely are pretty much just going to win because you can recycle the Return with Omega every turn, and that protects the Goliath every turn, which is really powerful. And then this card can keep coming back from the Banish Zone. That the Goliath doesn't interact with that, so that's really cool. So that's like a really good setup that doesn't happen all the times, but when you draw the Revival stuff, it usually can happen. We are playing these guys, so I think everyone kind of knows that combo. I just like, I know it's like, I think there's a regular rank 8 that only takes 2 monsters that is a galaxy. So I guess like technically you could just like play one of them. I don't really know. It's like Cypher Dragon as well. But I like this. This works just fine. This guy's cool because he pops cards, and then you summon this and you just win the game. You summon Goliath, Archbrave, and then the Ancient Stone, and then you just like get a ton of advantage and summon Goliath, and they can't play the game. So that's really cool. The best field in this deck is number 95, sending Goliath, and then Chaos Max Dragon. The Chaos Max Dragon isn't really the win condition there, but it is another card that's like super awkward to deal with, because to out the Goliath, they have to waste like multiple Purple Poison Magicians if you're playing against Magicians, and in that case, like now they can't out the Chaos Max Dragon, so it's pretty cool. And 1 copy of number 38. If you draw the Archbrave or the Goliath and you can't make there's like no reason to make number 95 if you draw those cards, because that's all it's in there for. Which is like one of the reasons you like have to play those cards, by the way, because what happens if you don't play those cards, you just like number 95, you send like White Stone, Ancient Stone, and like a random card, and that doesn't like do anything. It doesn't like make a board, and you have to invest some resources to make number 95, so I want a big payoff. Anyway, though, if you draw those cards, you like have to make this. He's just like the second best rank 8 to make. For the Link monsters, Underclock Taker, pretty good. Proxy Dragon and Skull Dread. So 2 notes here. You don't have to play Skull Dread. I'd say that this card is really good in this deck. But because I'm not playing like hand traps, it's sort of, it's like an unintentional budget version of this deck, I guess. I don't actually know, but I'm just assuming with all the reprints and stuff. Anyway, if you don't have Skull Dread, you don't have to play it. It is cool because you can make it pretty much any time that you have Dragon with Lava Rhapsody. That puts 3 differently named monsters on board. As long as you can get to a 4th one, you're golden. And if you have a Link Kribo, definitely play that instead of Proxy Dragon. I don't have that card. No one on my locals has had one for sale, so it really sucks. But if you have Link Kribo, play that instead of Proxy. Anyway, though, that is going to wrap up my profile. Yeah, I mean, it's like kind of a serious, non-meme version of Chaos Max Dragon. I tried to make it as competitive as humanly possible, and I think it actually kind of worked out. I'd still say if you want to play Blue Eyes competitively, you want to use Dragon of Battle Rhapsody and like actually just dominate some games, definitely play the Invoked version of this deck. I've had a ton of success with that one on my streams and stuff. But yeah, I think this is, in terms of like how to play Chaos Max Dragon in a sort of competitive way, this is like the pinnacle of doing it. And it's not playing like the gimmicky cards like Swords of Concealing Light or Book of Eclipse or anything. It's just kind of a good control deck that happens to play Chaos Max as well. But yeah, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.